Hello and welcome to this episode of I Don't Know Jack About Parenting, where today I am going to be talking about how the news and TV are destroying your kids in your household.
So the big question is this: how are parents like us, who don't have a manual, who are doing the best we can, who feel as though we aren't enough, how are we going to raise healthy, happy children who we are proud of and still keep our sanity in that process? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Ryan Roy, and welcome to I Don't Know Jack About Parenting, a podcast for parents who are being real with themselves.
Hello and welcome back to this episode of I Don't Know Jack About Parenting, where today I'm going to be talking about how the news and your television is destroying your kids right in your own household. So last week I talked about, the 5 things you should say to your kids each and every single week so that they know that they're loved, and how words are powerful, and they don't need to be just your words, right? So we talked about saying, I love you, asking them what their day is going to look like, telling them how proud and grateful you are to be their parent, telling them and set their day with intention of, hey, have a great day and don't forget who you are. And then the words of affirmation of I trust you and I believe in you, said and demonstrated throughout the day. Those are all fantastic things. And then guess what? You come home from work. You've had a long day. You want to get caught up on world events, and you turn on that television, and your kids and outside of today's craziness, just for reference, right? We're in the middle of a pandemic of COVID-19. We're in the middle of huge challenges in the police forces and talking about defunding police. We're in the middle of protests around Black Lives Matter, which have turned into rioting and looting. And so you sit there and tell your kids, have a great day, and that daddy loves you. And then you turn on the television and they see numbers rising of a deadly virus, and that we're stuck in the house because we're fearful of contacting this virus. And then we get into, they see buildings on fire, and police that they were taught to be trusted by us, right? Their parents. And they're being portrayed as negative forces in this world, and talking about not give them money and we should take away police officers' rights. And they are getting these mixed messages. And they're saying, why are they, mommy, daddy, the police are there to protect us. You said if we ever had a problem, call 911. And yet, police officers aren't allowed to arrest people who are setting buildings on fire and throwing things at them. And our kids have to be confused. I think half of the nation right now is confused. I'm confused. So if I'm confused and the news confuses me, and the news, as I have clients, right, and as a life coach by profession, I have clients telling me they're arguing with their spouses, and there's internal turmoil within the home due to what's going on in the world. The best advice I've given them, and I'm giving you right now, is do not listen to the news. You say, well, yeah, but I need to know what's going on in current events. Man, you could read headlines, and I'm going to tell you right now, most of the headlines are horrendous. So why would you want to bring in that toxicity to create volatility within your own household, and it's being magnified by the media? So until things slow down, I would say curb it. Curb the amount of time or when you watch the news, because it cannot be good for our children. Now you would say, yeah, but you got, and I could just hear the arguments of why they do that. I'm going to preface it with this. I've watched very little news / TV live. I record a lot of stuff. I do not like commercials. If I watch a show, which is very seldom, I watch it on recording, and it's typically just a show. It's not the news. I haven't watched the news for the better part of the last 10 years for this purpose. So you could say, oh, that's easy for you to say, listen, my life is so much greater after the last 10 years for having not watched the news, for not bringing that toxicity into my mind. And as a matter of fact, and I'll be honest, I've watched it more in the last 3 months, and I find myself being not as productive because I'm preoccupied with even if it derails me for 20 minutes on a Facebook feed because I read something I wouldn't normally read, or to be honest with you, I'm having challenges right now with content that I want to share with you on these podcasts. I'm like, what do I want to share? And when I came across last week's episode, I was like, yeah, this is how we empower our kids. And as I'm reading through it, I'm sitting there going, but how is the mainstream media destroying the same lessons we're trying to empower our kids with? And I've shared this with some people. Listen, I don't know jack about parenting, but I do know at some point my children are going to go back to school. And I know that they've been sheltered from a lot of the stuff that is on the mainstream news. They know a little bit. The 2-year-old doesn't know anything, right? Because he just doesn't know anything. But the 8-year-old knows very little. My biggest fear is when my son goes back and the kids have a different perspective on life because of what's going on in the news and the conversations that are being had in the households openly while kids are there and thinking the kids just don't understand or they don't hear, but they're being influenced by our words, right? Our opinions around what's going on the news, is that my son comes back and he's like, Daddy, my friends, are mad at me because of my skin color. And I'll be like, yeah, they've been watching too much news. Are you mad at them for their skin color? No? Well, that's good. We're on the right side of the fence. We're doing the right things in this household. And we shouldn't be judging people that way. That's my biggest fear. Is now that there's a movement, right, that's so big that kids can't understand because they haven't experienced the history in this country, nor have they even studied it, that the innocence of a child is being tainted by news media and the adults in their very own home and their opinions based on that. And that maybe the focus on a certain demographic being exposed the way it is will now be like, well, maybe somebody else's life doesn't matter because kids can't discern. So listen to the words you say. Hopefully they're more positive than negative. Hopefully 20 times more positive than negative. Listen to what's going on in the news in your own time and try to keep those adult conversations around that away from the kids because they can't discern at this age, at least at my children's age, what those things mean. And then I'll share this. I mean, I don't know jack about parenting, but I know that my mom, in my opinion, made a wise decision. My mom was a very smart woman, and she knew that she had flaws. And there are certain things she did. She was somewhat of an introvert, and she thought she was limited in her capacity to be effective in this world and leave a footprint because she was introverted. So she intentionally would bring us to parties and get out on the dance floor and talk to a bunch of people outside of her comfort zone because she wanted us, her children, to be more comfortable doing those things because she thought it put us in a better position to succeed than herself. And then something she said to me in my early 20s, we were having a conversation, and my mom said something that was, and I don't know what it is. You know, I just remember how I feel. They always say people don't remember the words you say to them, but they remember how you make them feel. And whatever my mother said, I thought was a very racist comment at the time. And I said to her, I said, Mom, you didn't raise me to be that way. You told me to treat everybody as equals, as I never knew who I would be talking to. She goes, I know I have my flaws and I didn't want to put them onto you. Interesting comment. Profound comment. So she didn't use certain words and vocabulary and talk negatively about people, even though she may have had a negative viewpoint, because she didn't want to influence me and my siblings in that way. Because at the core of who she is, she knew she was wrong. And maybe just didn't have the wherewithal on how to change that thought process, or had the time to do the research to change that thought process. So be careful of the words that you use, because your kids are listening. And they do what we do. They don't necessarily, that old saying, do as I say, not as I do, never works. Kids do what we do. We'll see you in next week's episode.
Do you want to be the dad you wish you had? If so, go get my free book, Be the Dad You Wish You Had, at BeTheDadYouWishYouHad.com. Inside, you'll find my most effective 40 tips to quickly and easily transform yourself into the ideal dad. Go to BeTheDadYouWishYouHad.com now and get it while it's free.